Hi there, it's Nicole Spohr for Simon Says Stamp, and today I'm sharing some layered snowflakes cards with the January 2021 card kit of the month called Snowflake Season. We're going to be using the Snowflake Season stamp set included in the kit, as well as the incredible Whimsy Stamps Blurry Flurries 6x6 pattern paper to create these one layer wonders. So I am absolutely in love with the pattern paper from the kit, and I actually used this Great Basics rectangle die to die cut my backgrounds to A2 sized. You could also trim them with a paper trimmer. What I like is with the die, it's really easy to cut the part of the background that I want to use for my cards. And for this particular project and for this set of 4 cards, I chose to kind of go with more of the neutrals as opposed to kind of like the teals and blues and purples that you also get in these pattern papers. We're going to stamp different greetings on each. If you want to simplify this project even more, you could definitely go ahead and stamp all of the same greeting. Another great idea for this card kit, because this isn't really a holiday kit, you can definitely use it if you get yours in time. But this is the January kit. It's not necessarily meant for holidays. And what I love when Simon has done these snowflake themed kits before in January is I really, really love creating thank you cards that I can then send out after the holidays. So maybe your kids have thank you cards to write out. Maybe you have thank you cards to write out. Maybe you have thank yous you want to give to customers or fellow employees, whatever it might be. I think they make fantastic thank yous. So you could totally use the thank you greetings from the stamp set to create a whole set of thank you cards that are perfect for the winter. On my background then, I'm going to line up some snowflakes around the perimeter of the design. You will notice that I am going to stamp this particular orientation of snowflakes 4 times. I'm setting them up in my MISTI so that I can repeat this on each background. All of my snowflakes are going to be in the same place. I will be mixing up the embossing powders used to match the pattern paper. I also want to mention that these sentiments are a little on what I would call the smaller side. I love them, but I found when I was creating another project that if I stamped and embossed them, and not necessarily this one, although I don't think it really translates fantastic when it's stamped and embossed, at least it didn't for me, but the really, really teeny tiny one doesn't stamp and emboss well because it just blows up the line too much and makes the letters too fat, I guess I would say. So what I like to do is actually just stamp it with the dye ink. I use Simon Says Stamp KHAKI ink for my kind of goldish type of background. Then for this background, we are heat embossing with gold embossing powder. This is antique gold embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. In fact, I used all Simon Says Stamp embossing powders for my cards and layering 3 colors of embossing powder per card or per panel to really get that beautiful layered effect of different colors of snowflakes. So we will heat set this and move on to our next background. I will be speeding up a lot of this because it is a ton of repetition. I left it in so you could see the assembly line style process of this project. And like I was mentioning earlier, let's say you're making that set of, let's say 10 thank you cards. You would just repeat this for each one. And if you didn't switch up your embossing powders to as many different ones as I did, although it doesn't take that much more time, but if you would just stick to 3 colors, it would go even faster. So antique gold was the color I used for a couple of my backgrounds. In fact, I was going to do that blue background, but we'll come back to that. Let's do the gold backgrounds first. So 2 of the backgrounds are going to feature antique gold, rose gold, and white. The other 2 backgrounds are going to feature white, silver, and navy embossing powders. And I've had the navy embossing powder for quite some time. It is from Simon Says Stamp, and I always forget about it. And I have to tell you that I think it's one of the things that makes the biggest difference on those blue background cards, or the kind of whitish silver background cards. I absolutely love it, and I hope you guys do too. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Let's switch over to those backgrounds. So this is more of the whitish background, and I realized really quickly I probably should go ahead and stamp my sentiment first before stamping my snowflakes, especially because I'm switching them all. I didn't on this one, but I will do that for the final panel. And this is the silver embossing powder. We're just going to go ahead and go straight to silver for this first. And heat set. I've laid all my embossing powders out in a row off camera, making it very easy to grab the dish, because I keep my embossing powders in these little resealable containers that make it easy to tap the excess powder back into that container. And then I am stamping on this background with some smoke gray ink on the kind of lighter white background. And then we're going to use soft navy on this background that has a lot more blue to it. I mentioned this in another video I have done recently, but I feel like ink color for sentiments is so important. So I definitely went with ink colors that match my pattern papers. I didn't go for black. I felt like black would really take away from the snowy look and feel of this design. And so I purposely picked ink colors that match my pattern papers so everything flowed together seamlessly. Now that we have our first layer, I'm going to clean these stamps really well. We're going to put them back on our sheet, and we are going to go ahead and line up our snowflakes for the next background. Let's add our sentiment right quick. In fact, let's do a little sentiment work, whether we are going to leave the sentiment as is with like just the bigger script kind of sentiment. And on, I think 3 of the 4, I'm going to add one of the smaller teeny tiny sentiments with it to fill in a little bit more space. And I just really love them. So kind of one of a kind winter greetings is what that panel reads. This is a Snow Glad We're Friends, and we are going to add an extra sentiment to this with that smoke gray ink. Missing you snow much, and then Snow Glad We're Friends. This is the Snow Much Thanks card. We are going to add a little sentiment to this one. And then the last one, we're not going to add anything else to it. I thought I was going to, and I just didn't really think anything fit very well, so we'll just leave it as is. Let's go back to our bigger Misty and grab some more snowflakes. The reason I use a Misty is so that I can stamp multiple snowflakes at once, and so that they are lined up in exactly the same place on each panel every time I stamp them. This makes repetition, this makes assembly line style so much easier. I'm prepping my background with a powder tool. I do tend to ink up my images when I'm embossing twice with the embossing ink, just because I really want a good embossed impression. This is the white snowflakes. This is the only background that I don't feel like the whites show up quite as well as they do on the others, but they show up enough. They blend into that bokeh look so beautifully. And then we'll do our other gold background. This step for all 4 cards is the white embossing powder. This is the embossing powder color that I used throughout the entire project. The rest kind of switch up depending on the color of the background. Even this mostly white background, the white snowflakes end up looking really beautiful on it. And gives it that really subtle snowflake texture over the bokeh design. And again, I cannot say enough about this Whimsy Stamps Blurry Flurries pattern paper. Probably my all-time favorite pattern paper of 2020. I have really, really been loving pattern paper again. Pattern paper completely used to be my jam back in the day, especially in my scrapbooking days. And I think I've kind of gotten out of the habit of using it. And lately, I have purchased more pattern paper this year than probably the past 3 years combined. I love the little 6x6 pads. I think the companies are killing it. And I am really excited to share more pattern paper ideas with you guys. Some white on this blue background. You just can't go wrong. All of the patterns in this paper pad are stunning. And each side, I just can't get enough. Both sides are beautiful. It was really a hard choice to figure out which side I wanted to use for the project. So we'll do a couple more here before we clean these stamps and move on to the next embossing powder color. So this, this is the navy embossing powder, which I hope you can see. It is beautiful in real life, so beautiful on those white backgrounds. Now, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to use on the more gold toned backgrounds, the more neutral. And so I actually opted for rose gold, and it is perfect. It almost has a coppery type feel, I think, when combined with these, but it looks beautiful with this background. It just flows together perfectly, and I couldn't be happier with how this turned out. Really, really excited about that. Now, really, at this point, you could leave it as is, but I wanted my borders to be super full. So I ended up doing a whole nother round of embossing powder, about 2 more rounds, I believe. So I used the antique gold again for this particular design. And then I want to say I used rose gold. I'm sure I did. And rose gold. Those are the colors I'm going to use for the neutral backgrounds. And then for the silver white backgrounds, or the blue silver white backgrounds, I believe I used the navy, and I'm sure the silver. So I didn't do the white round again, but the white tended to be the round that I had a lot of snowflakes, and I wanted a few more prominent snowflakes that didn't blend into the background quite as much to finish out the design. You can really see the blending now and see how beautiful some of the embossing overlaps. That is perfectly fine. You end up with absolutely gorgeous borders all the way around. Now, if the snowflakes slightly overlap any of the stamped sentiments, I took a fine tip paintbrush and just gently wiped away anything that was overlapping a letter so that it was still legible. So very, very gently, you can see there on the loop of the W, I got rid of some of that. And I'll do that on another card. I know I said I kept everything in the MISTI and stamped it the same. There is one exception to that with one of these backgrounds, because this snowflake right here that I'm having to wipe so much of it away for this sentiment, I opted to move it for one of the backgrounds, this one, so that it doesn't overlap the sentiment quite so much and I don't have to wipe as much away. And then I stamped the remaining 2 like this. Or I guess I moved it for the last one. I switched to the other background and then I went ahead and did this one. And then we have just a little bit left, this little teeny tiny trio to fill in, and we are almost done. So this project is mostly stamping and embossing. There is not a ton of additional steps. We've die cut our backgrounds, we stamped our sentiments with dye ink, and then we are layering 3 colors of embossing powder per panel to create this beautiful layered decorative design that almost looks like embossed snowflakes over a beautifully inked and maybe inked and stamped background. And the final thing we will do is embellish each of our backgrounds with gems and droplets and confetti to kind of round it all out and bring it all together. It's one of my favorite things is those little finishing details. So in this case, we're going to use some little Pretty Pink Posh white gemstones or jewels for the blue silver backgrounds, and then the like metallic ones that are more gold for the neutral backgrounds. We're going to use silver star confetti for these blue backgrounds. And I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue that does come in the January 2021 kit. It works fantastic for this. And I'm just going to pick all of these little pieces up with like a jewel picker and add them where they go. I have all of my little embellishments kind of spilled out on my desk, so it's easy to pick up and put them in place. We've got these little clay snowflakes from Trinity Stamps. I believe they're called Vanilla Sugar Snowflakes. Little silver star confetti from Lucy's Little Things. And then these clear droplets, heart droplets from Trinity Stamps. We're going to have one kind of centered underneath our sentiment and then a couple of smaller ones scattered throughout. So a nice assortment of simple, pretty, dimensional embellishments dress up our snowflake panels perfectly. Same thing for the neutral background, just a few different colors. As I mentioned, we've got the metallic jewels and we have some gold matte stars from Lucy's Little Things. We will be using the same white clay hearts. Those are Vanilla Sugar hearts from Trinity Stamps, and the same clear heart droplets. So you can see the difference that embossing powder makes on the backgrounds and how important it is to choose not only your ink colors, but embossing powder colors to match your background for truly beautiful results. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this set of 4 layered embossed snowflake cards featuring the January 2021 Simon Says Stamp card kit. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Simon Says Stamp products from the January card kit that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.